right, wonderful. I feel like that's a good space for us to go ahead and get started. So, hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Javier Gutierrez. I'm an admissions and outreach counselor here at Sacramento State. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturday afternoon to join us for day 2 of Admitted Student Weekend. And we know the times have been challenging these last 13 months, and a lot of y'all may still be in school right now taking classes. So we appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday afternoon to learn about your new university. This session that you're attending right now for the next hour is going to be completely dedicated to learning about the Division of Inclusive Excellence. The Division of Inclusive Excellence is responsible for ensuring Sac State's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion on campus. And we have a speaker with us today who's going to go over what you could expect from the division as a new student at Sacramento State, and how our campus is different from any other campuses that you may be considering for fall 21 admission. As far as housekeeping items, this Zoom session is going to be held in a webinar format, which basically means that you as a participant will not have access to your microphone or your camera options for the duration of the presentation, which is okay. The primary way that we're going to communicate throughout the duration of the presentation is using the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of your screen. So as we're going through, if you have any questions for our speaker that you would like to be addressed, feel free to go ahead and utilize the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of your screen. The final 15 minutes of this session is going to be an opportunity for our speaker to answer your questions live for all of our participants. So if you have any questions, make sure that you're using the Q&A feature that is at the bottom of your screen. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the meat and potatoes of this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and defer to our speaker from the Division of Inclusive Excellence.
Hi there. Thank you, Javier, for that setup for us. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christina Armstrong-Smith. I am OEO Project Manager, and thanks for carving out some of your weekends to sit and spend some time with me. Hopefully, maybe you're eating lunch at the same time. I'll get my lunch hopefully after this. And thanks for your time and attention today. So in today's session, I'm going to talk about a number of different things related to the Division of Inclusive Excellence, but I really like to start with a bit of background. First, just for context. So Sacramento State's mission and imperatives, if you're not familiar, as California's capital university, we transform lives by preparing students for leadership, service, and success, and that is the Sac State mission statement. It's very clear, very concise, very pointed, and is essentially our guidepost for what we should be doing, what we are doing, and also a measure of success for us as an institution in, as we're making decisions day to day and what we're doing in our work. Are we headed in the right direction, the direction that we want to be going in? There are 5 imperatives or initiatives that have been set up by our current president, Dr. Nelson. The initiatives generally are connected to a strategic plan and usually shift every maybe 5 to 7 years or so as things change and as we complete initiatives or as initiatives are, need to pivot based on the needs of the university. And so the 5 imperatives that we have now are there on the screen. So student success, diversity and inclusion, community engagement, philanthropy, and public safety. So the important pieces to note that the university is involved in many things, and all of these things are important and help support the mission there of transforming lives by preparing students for leadership, service, and success. And so, of course, in this session, where we're talking about the Division of Inclusive Excellence, I'm going to focus on that second initiative, which is diversity and inclusion, and talk to you today about some of the things that our campus has done, is doing, and have plans to do in the future and will be doing in the future as well. So kind of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So inclusive excellence as a concept is the ongoing and active process of ensuring our values of diversity, equity, and inclusion are integrated into the core functions and operations of our university in order to realize educational equity and the full benefits of having a diverse and inclusive campus. So inclusive excellence is a concept that was not coined by our institution by any means. It's a way of a framework for recognizing that it's not a one-time thing. It's not a one and done activity or event. It's something that we're doing ongoing. And the goal is really to to really dive into who we are as an institution, where we want to go, and see how some of the core functions and processes of the university might be hindering us from being successful, particularly as it relates to providing and living up to our values, which I'll share in a bit, those values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So a bit of background about the Division of Inclusive Excellence, just to understand kind of where we've come from, is the division actually came about based on feedback from the campus community. So about 2016, the campus identified an individual to serve in an interim role of the executive director, I think, of diversity and inclusion, or diversity and inclusion efforts, or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact title, but the role of that particular individual, who was in that position for a year, was really to do like a campus assessment. So if we're going to have a formal role of someone who is overseeing or helping to support the institution's efforts related to diversity and inclusion, what does that even mean for our campus? What needs do we have? And so this person, through surveys, through assessments, through focus groups, really came together and proposed to the president's cabinet, the recommendation that there be a person hired full-time in a position, and that person would be helping to spearhead some initiatives and support the campus community in the work that was already being done. So recognizing that we were already doing a lot of the work that we're doing today related to diversity and inclusion efforts, definitely want to emphasize that it's not that in 2016 all of a sudden we started to have diversity and inclusion efforts. That's absolutely not what it was. There've always been spaces on campus that have been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and I'll talk about some of those spaces specifically towards the end of the presentation, but we didn't have anything in place to kind of centralize the efforts and to focus on from a core functional and operational perspective and analyze the policies, procedures, and practices. We didn't have anything in place for that. And so the executive director position was created, which was filled by Diana Tate Vermeer, who is in the role still. So Diana was hired, and fortunately, after a couple of months, I think, or a year or so, she was joined by a support staff. So then we were up to 2 people in the area. And then through the work that she was doing, again, with just 2 people, right? More focus groups, doing surveys. There's some baseline surveys out of USC and their equity centers there, just learning more about what the campus needed and getting more specific. But that feedback, that voice from faculty, from staff, and from students has always been and will always continue to be one of the pillars of the work that we're doing, and reminding people that we are not the folks kind of dictating, here's how you should be doing diversity and equity, and here's how you should be doing, inclusive practices, but it's really to support and empower others to lead from where they are. So empowering students, whether or not someone's in a formal leadership role or not, if you want to be involved in diversity, equity, inclusion work, what can you be doing and how can we support you in that? So after some fantastic work that Diana was doing and recognizing the need for additional resources, Diana's position was actually changed to a vice president position. So she is the vice president for the Division of Inclusive Excellence. And so an entire division was actually created. They were able to hire an additional person. So then we were up to 3 staff members, which was great. And that person, Dr. John Johnson, is the director for Inclusive Excellence Learning. John's role is and was to focus on the learning opportunities for staff and faculty especially. We have had and continue to have a lot of learning opportunities for students, right? So learning about diversity and inclusion practices and improving in those areas for students, but we also recognize that it's not up to the students alone to participate and help to shift some of this campus culture. It's important for staff and faculty to be involved in that as well. And for a lot of staff and faculty, that means learning things, learning new things, relearning things, and getting exposed to new ideas. And so his role is specifically focused in that. and he was on board. Then we got, then there was a reshift in terms of the Office for Equal Opportunity, which is where I'm working as project manager. That office was actually moved over from Human Resources to the Division of Inclusive Excellence. And the Office for Equal Opportunity, and I'll talk about it a little bit later in more detail, the reshifting from Human Resources to Inclusive Excellence is because of the university recognizing that the role that OEO, the Office for Equal Opportunity, the role that we play isn't simply just to follow the law. It isn't just to, let's just make sure we don't get sued, and that's really all that we care about. It's really based in supporting some of this diversity, equity, and inclusion work as well. So fast forward to today, we have, I want to say, there's about 9 staff members, right? So from 2016 to 2020, 2021, to have that much growth in a division is actually not very common. And you'll see one of the things that keeps us apart, that helps us stand apart from other institutions, is it's very common for other institutions to just have that one person that's in that position, to just have that director for equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts, or just have that chief diversity officer, and they are the only person that's in that role. They don't have any kind of support staff. There's no leadership coming out of that area outside of just them. And so that's really says a lot about the commitment that the university has, and recognizes that this work is too heavy, it's too important for one person to really be able to do all of it. And so what we actually do in Inclusive Excellence is a number of things. I talked about the inclusive excellence learning for faculty and staff. There's also recruitment, retention, and success for underrepresented faculty, recognizing how powerful and important it is for students on our campus to see themselves represented on campus, and especially in the classroom. I can say for myself, the very first time that I was ever in a college or classroom, not even college, an educational setting where I saw someone that looked like me was not until I was in graduate school. So I think I was 24, 23, 24, and that was the very first time I had ever seen someone teaching that looked like me. And I remember how transformative and powerful that experience was for me. I had never thought about it before because I didn't know any better, right? But it was very, very powerful. So I can personally attest to how important it is for folks to be able to see themselves represented on campus with faculty and with staff as well. So recognizing that there are some unique challenges that faculty of color face, just getting through the process of earning their teaching, their PhDs or masters, depending on their level. But for tenure track faculty, just the fact of, the process of going through the tenure process can be very confusing. And it's about the retention piece. So it's not just enough to hire a diverse group of individuals, because we want to make sure that we're also cultivating in an environment where they will feel welcome and supported, because if they feel welcome and supported, then they will stay at Sac State and they will retain here, and that's where those retention efforts come in. And so that's our director for diversity, or our director for faculty initiatives. It might not be her exact title, but something I might have butchered her title, but that's her role specifically. Responding to incidents of reports of bias, discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, that's where OEO comes into play. So, again, I talked about our office being kind of rooted in compliance and Title IX, which is a federal law. What's the word? Prohibiting discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, sex harassment specifically for Title IX. But our office is sometimes, when there are reports that are brought to our office that don't meet like the threshold or the level of a policy violation, what our office is able to do can sometimes be very limited as a result. And so in response to the needs of the campus, putting into place our bias response director, which is a position that we're going to be hiring for pretty shortly here, hopefully in the next couple of months, to recognize that even if something doesn't fall to the level of a policy violation, it can still cause harm to our campus community, either by the people that were impacted with it directly or by the people that were impacted by it, tangentially as well. So having someone in that bias response director position to help to bring together folks, to have conversations about differing opinions and views on certain things, and come to a common understanding, which isn't always an agreement, but a common understanding about how to move forward and continue to support the mission and vision of the university. Campus-wide events, which I'll talk about in just a moment, including our convocation. And then really that middle one, that central one, which is capacity building for transformational change in institutional policy and practice. So it's not, again, it's not about, dictating to other people, you should be doing this, you should change this, you should fix this, but it's about, inviting other people to be involved in the process where they can start to examine these practices on their own. And they're able to see, hey, I learned a bit about, anti-racism, I learned a bit about microaggressions, and I learned about bias, and here's why I'm seeing that maybe show up in some of the work that we're doing in our office, and how can we, make adjustments and changes just based on what we have, not having to wait for someone to say, hey, you should be changing this stuff, but they're able to take that initiative and do it on their own. So a bit about our campus, our campus, our student population specifically. Sacramento State is an incredibly diverse campus. And this is just one demographic metric, which is the racial and ethnic metric, but it's an important one, and I'll talk about the centers that we have towards the end of the presentation. Because as folks come to campus with various identities, it impacts the experience that they have. Someone from a particular background is not going to have the same experience as someone from maybe a different background. And that's something that we need to recognize and respect and provide opportunities for all of the folks, regardless of their life experiences or beliefs or their characteristics or whatnot, that they're still able to achieve their goals, and we're able to support them in achieving their goals. Which for most people is graduation, right? So moving on, getting that degree, and then being able to be successful there. So learning a little bit about our values and transitioning there, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a great tie-in. The diversity piece, especially on that last slide, I should point out that at one point, Sac State was named the most diverse institution west of the Mississippi. I think we're just still one of the most. I don't know if we're the most, but definitely, top 10, top 5, maybe top 3 diverse institutions. So recognizing that we have these 3 pillars in inclusive excellence that guide the work that we do and the value set that we have. I'm just going to walk you through each of them to understand what they mean from our perspective. So that very first one, diversity, is the presence of social and cultural difference among individuals and groups within an environment that's often defined through numerical representation. So looking at the previous slides there related to demographics, right? This percentage of students meet this threshold of this identity or this culture or this social difference. But it's just the presence of difference and recognizing that difference that's really, really important for this key piece to even to shine through. So it's not just in individual people, but it shows up in groups within a particular environment as well. The second piece is equity, and that's about the presence of structures and practices that recognize the impact of systemic bias and discrimination and work actively to ensure opportunity and fairness for all. So it's recognizing that these structures do exist, and that's so key and vital to doing any type of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And not only recognizing that they exist, but being honest and pointing out where they exist on our very own campus, meaning that we have work to do, we are doing work, and we have work to do. It's analyzing the policies that we have, analyzing the core functions and operations of the institution to really unpack and see how some of these things might be impacting fairness and opportunity for access for the members of the campus community. The last piece is related to inclusion. So the active individuals with different identities being welcomed, valued, and leveraged within a group or a setting. And the inclusion piece is really kind of the final, the piece that brings everything together. So just diversity and equity alone is not enough. That inclusion piece means that you can be different, you can think different, you can look differently, and you are still welcome, you are still valued, you are still respected here. And that's very, very important for a lot of people to feel like they matter, to feel like they're seen on a campus, particularly a campus of 30,000, 31,000, almost 32,000 plus students at this point, to understand that even if you look, think, act differently, you don't need to, contort yourself or conform or adjust your outward appearance in order to be accepted or respected on our campus, and really fostering that within our culture, because once we're able to get past that point, right, where we're not seeing someone and we're excluding them and saying, that person is, over there, like, yes, we're all very diverse, but we don't talk to each other. At an institution of higher education and learning, what a great place to learn about various cultures, ideas, identities, belief sets, when we are able to do so respectfully as well. So our values really come together and are supported together, and it helps to create that sense of belonging, that sense that, you do matter here, and mattering is super important. If you're ever in some type of situation or setting where you feel like you say something and you're dismissed, or you're ignored, or you're minimized, then it really makes you feel like, well, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this isn't my space. These aren't my people. And so what I'm going to do, what I'll challenge you with at the end of this presentation, I'll show you a couple of spaces and centers that exist on campus where you could think, when you come to Sac State, where might I find that sense of belonging? Where might I find those folks that, are going to support and respect me, even if they're not like you? Maybe they don't look like you or think like you or talk like you, but they will support, respect, and value who you are, based on, how you're showing up in certain spaces. And when you feel welcome somewhere, at a home or at an event, right, you want to stay there. And so if we take that same concept and we apply it to you staying at Sac State, right, that means that you're much more likely to meet your goal, and our goal for you, which is graduation in 2 years or 4 years, depending on what your goals are for your education. So the Hornet Honor Code is a value set that we have, and a code that we have as Hornets in general. It really helps grounds us in a basic shared understanding of how we interact with each other, and the standards that we have for each other. And so there's 6 different pieces to it that as Hornets, we will promote an inclusive campus and community. We will listen and respect each other's thoughts, interests, and views. We will value diversity and learn from one another. We will engage daily with mutual trust, care, and integrity. We will support a culture of honor and adhere to campus policies for honesty, ethics, and conduct. And we will be proud to be Sac State Hornets. So related to our values of anti-racism, in May of this past year, not this year, obviously, because we're in April, but May of the previous year, in response to things that were happening in the world, things that were happening locally, and really the response to the needs of our campus, we started to kind of pivot and recognize the need to focus specifically on some anti-racism initiatives for our campus. And so again, that came right directly out of campus feedback, recognizing the needs of our campus community. Right? This wasn't just like, we've decided this is important for our campus. It was absolutely in response to, again, things that were happening locally in our city, things that were happening on our campus, and things that were happening nationally and internationally as well. So the anti-racism efforts that we've done, the culminating, or the opening, the kickoff for it was in fall of 2020 with our convocation. We were really fortunate to have Dr. Kendi and Dr. Harper both speak and talk about their work in this area, in particular Dr. Kendi, with the work that he's done and the books that he's written as well, and Dr. Harper and the work there with the USC Race and Diversity Center. that might not be what they're called exactly, but the work that he's been doing for years. They've both been doing work on this, but to learn more from each other as well. So there were different breakout sessions that folks were able to attend, and the university really, really spotlighted and emphasized to the campus community how important that this conversation was to have. So much so that the institution essentially was on pause for the day while folks had the opportunity to attend the convocation. And so for some people, that meant that classes were canceled so that people could attend, or for some staff, that meant that they, put their out of office message on to say that they were attending the convocation. That way they were able to attend the sessions that were there, which is a pretty big deal. The convocation was at the beginning of the fall semester, which traditionally is a pretty busy time of year. And the fact that folks were able to recognize and respect the need to kind of pause for a moment and to give space for this to happen is really important. So this theme, advancing our commitment to anti-racism, was the theme of all of the sessions. We had about 3,500 folks come, so definitely a very well attended event and a great success. So in general, when we are putting on events for our campus, this is what that looks like. So it's usually very large scale things that the entirety of campus is able to attend. Also, after the convocation, there was an open invitation, a call for participation to all of campus, faculty, staff, and students to participate in one of our anti-racism and inclusive campus planning committees. And so there are 8 committees altogether that folks are able to participate in, and based on the subject and the topic of that committee, that was the committee has been charged with basically, in this particular area as identified by the campus community, again, through the work that had been done before by Diana in terms of research and focus groups and such. These are the areas that campus has identified, or that the campus community has identified that we want to do some additional work in. And so the charge of each of these committees, their call to action was essentially to create a plan for how we're going to address each of these issues. And that would be, very systematically addressing these issues. And so the committees have been working over the past year to create those plans, and they will be proposing those sharing those, revealing those to the campus community in next month, actually. So once that information is available, it will definitely be shared on our campuses, on our website. The committees, important to note, are made up of students, faculty, and staff. So absolutely, really, again, emphasizing that it's an entire campus involved in these processes and getting different perspective and encouraging folks to be involved in that, and empowering people to feel like they can create change really from where they are, even if they're not in leadership roles or things of that nature. So when it comes to engagement and belonging, just to transition here, as I mentioned before, there are a variety of opportunities, people, places, and programs for you to be able to participate in when you come to Sac State. And thinking about, I'll mention a couple of them now, thinking about what places or programs or people might help you to be engaged with the campus community, but also find that sense of belonging for yourself. So there's a variety of campus centers kind of scattered throughout the campus. The Dreamer Resource Center, the Cerna Center, the MLK Center, the Veteran Success Center, Guardian Scholars, which is for former foster youth, Women's Resource Center, the Pride Center, Multicultural Center, the APITA Center, Asian Pacific Islander Desi American Center, and the Full Circle Project, which supports those students, and then the Cooper Woodson program. Cooper Woodson is a program that is to support the educational attainment of students of Black or African descent, and really focuses on education, community service. There's a book scholarship that you're able to get if you enroll in the program and are accepted and meet certain requirements in terms of meeting with your mentor and engaging with the educational programming that they have as well. So definitely lots of great opportunities when we are back on campus to participate. Project Rebound is also a specific center that wasn't seen on the previous page. Project Rebound is a really great program. It's definitely one of my favorites, and I like to highlight it for folks because this is for folks who are formerly incarcerated, who are coming to get their degrees. So sometimes, you know, people make mistakes in life and they, you know, they pay their debts to society, or they, you know, they serve their time and they're ready to reintegrate into society. And it can be really challenging to do that. Sometimes, you know, some folks have been incarcerated since they were adolescents. And so they don't even have a high school diploma or a GED. So being able to get, you know, something like that first is what's going to allow them to then be able to get a college degree, so that way they can go and get gainful employment and things of that nature, and supporting them and recognizing that they have very unique needs, right? Someone who was incarcerated for 5, 10, 15 years of their life is going to have a very different lived experience from someone who has not had that experience, and making sure that they are getting the resources that they need to be successful. So the Dreamer Resource Center is for Dreamer students. Well, it's supporting the needs of Dreamer students. The emphasis I want to make with all of these centers is that you don't need to identify with the population that center is serving in order to participate or gain from the services of that center, right? You could support other students that have that identity by participating in these centers, or you could learn more about, you know, what a dreamer is, what that even means, particularly in the state of California, and how someone being a dreamer may impact the experience that they have navigating through college or graduate school, for example. The CERNA Center, which is for the Latinx population, with the pillars of empowerment, leadership, self-advocacy, and civic engagement. Lots of programming that comes out of that office. They do a lot with speakers and speaker series as well to support the students of that population, and making sure that folks are able to be successful on their way to their degree attainment. The Women's Resource Center, which is centered around feminism, leadership, empowerment, and allyship. Great programming that comes out of the center there as well, and just being a resource for women identified students, conversations that exist around what it means to be female identified, and really just a support structure for those students as well. The Pride Center, which is for the LGBTQIA identified community as well, on the pillars of community, advocacy, liberation, and intersectionality, recognizing that these students have very unique experiences, even prior to getting to college, but even in their college experiences. And one of the things that comes out of the Pride Center is the Lavender graduation. Oh, I should have mentioned for the CERNA Center, they also have the, can't recall if they call it Latinx graduation ceremony, but they do have that graduation ceremony as well. And for the LGBTQIA population, the Lavender graduation as well, for the same reason, again, recognizing that the experience is a bit different for folks with those identities. The MLK Scholars Program out of the MLK Center with the pillars of leadership, knowledge, and empowerment for Pan-African identified, Black identified students. Again, you don't have to identify with that particular identity to engage with the program, but recognizing that that's kind of the focus of the program and the conversations that are going to happen there. So hosting things like healing spaces as needed, hosting study hours, hosting programming to talk about social, cultural, academic related topics as well, and mentoring programs with the Scholars Program. The photo there of the folks in the red shirt, that was them at a retreat. They do that over the summer and have the chance to really immerse themselves and get prepared for leadership and being student leaders on campus, participating in things like the Black Student Union, and just really being a voice, again, to empower students, even if they're not in a formal leadership position, to recognize that they can take part in creating that social change. The Full Circle Project is an initiative to support the Asian Pacific Islander Desi American student population. And the bottom left photo here is the graduation celebration for that student population. It's really great. I've had the chance to help support that graduation, volunteering for about, I want to say 4 or 5 years or so. It's really one of my favorite things to do over the course of the year. Graduation ceremonies in general are always really special, very meaningful for folks. But at this particular ceremony, it's really great to be able to acknowledge and recognize that for a lot of our students, and for a lot of you all, when you're graduating, it's not just you that's graduating, right? Sometimes it's you and it's your mother, your father helped, your grandparents helped, your aunts and uncles helped, your children helped. It's the village that was really supporting you. And so for people to be able to honor and acknowledge that maybe the sacrifices that their families made to be able to give them the opportunity to even be at a college graduation, and speaking with them in their native languages, it's always just very emotional. I always cry at least one part of the ceremony because it's just very emotional and very touching to recognize how powerful that experience is for a lot of our students. The Multicultural Center, just a general multicultural education. It could be for folks who are interested in multiculturalism, for folks who are interested in social justice. The pillars are community, education, justice, and love. They do a lot of programming as well. They'll have healing spaces that aren't necessarily connected to a particular identity or things like that. For almost all of the centers, there are opportunities to work there as well, or do some type of volunteer services too. So definitely keep that in mind if this is something that you're interested in, that you can participate in the programming, but you could also potentially create the programming there as well. And so I leave you with my thanks and gratitude for your attention and for your presence here today on this Saturday afternoon. And also a call to action to, get yourself involved when you come here, either through participating in the services that are offered through the centers that we have, attending events that are happening on campus, participating in open forums or town halls that are existing, responding to calls for input or feedback from the campus community related to some of the efforts that we have. If you have questions for anything in our office, anything related to what I talked about, our email address is listed on the screen here at diversity@cscus.edu, and you can feel free to email us as a live human being that responds to the questions there. But other than that, thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to Javier for any questions that y'all might have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina. I appreciate it. Like Christina mentioned, if y'all do have any questions, we're going to go ahead and utilize the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of your screen for the next 15 minutes. Go ahead and address any questions that y'all may have live. But one question that I did have, Christina, for a student who's considering coming to Sac State for fall 2021, either as a first-time student right out of high school or a transfer student coming from a previous college. And, they don't have that experience with all these different, divisions of diversity and inclusion and the multicultural center and, pride centers and women's centers. How would you encourage them to go about getting involved with these programs in the first semester? Because it can kind of be overwhelming. You showed that map. There's so many different places to go to, and there's so many different identities that somebody can identify with. And you mentioned, you don't have to particularly identify with a certain, center or people who participate in that center to, be involved with it. So how would you go about, encouraging a student to go in and mingle with these different departments? It can kind of seem overwhelming for a student at a glance.
Yeah, so my recommendation would be to, just get started and recognize that you have, either 2 years or 4 years to kind of connect with something. Kind of the easiest thing to do is to pay attention to the centers and the programming that comes out of the centers. In the student newspaper is always a really good place to look to learn about some events as well and get connected with them. But the centers all have their websites too. A lot of them have social media sites that you're able to follow as well. So just knowing that they exist and learning about the programming that they're having. But then also picking one, like, oh, that sounds interesting to me, or, oh, I want to learn more about that, or, oh, I don't have class at that time, and just picking one and going and see, how you feel about the experience there. And you kind of know when you, it's like going to a restaurant, right? Like, within the first 15 minutes, if you're going to enjoy having dinner or lunch or whatnot there. Like, you could just the vibe or the atmosphere or the environment or the, whatever it happens to be. And usually with programming, you can kind of tell the same thing from the folks that are there. And then you'll build that community, because the thing that you'll find is, if you're going to some of these programs, is you'll end up running into like some of the same people over and over again, and all of a sudden that's your tribe that you've found as well. So that's definitely going to be my recommendation for folks getting involved, is just being aware, reaching out, being proactive, right? Being active and not passive. So don't just wait like for someone to come and tell you about these things, but actively seeking them out, and not being afraid to, even if that means one thing per month. You write a list of centers, like, okay, this month I'm going to go to something from the CERNA Center, and what's the CERNA Center offering. And that could be really helpful and impactful to just get started.
Wonderful. I have a question from Tamia Shaw right here in the Q&A feature. She's asking, how time consuming are they? And I think they might be referring to, if you do get involved in a program like, Guardian Scholars or, Centers for Diversity and Inclusion or Multicultural Center, how time consuming could, either working for those centers be, or volunteering for those centers? I know that's kind of a general question, but if you have some thoughts on that, Christina.
Yeah, it's really as time consuming as you want it to be, based on your availability or level of interest. So if you don't have a ton of time, then probably the least time consuming thing you could do is give feedback, if a feedback's asked for related to your experience as a student. That might take you 20 minutes. You send an email or you fill out a form. That's super fast. It could also be you attending a program or an event. Sometimes that means it's an hour or so. A lot of times people, particularly when we get back to campus, in between classes, you have a class at 10 and then you don't have another class until 3. What do you do with that time in between? So it's a great opportunity to say like, oh, I'm going to go to a program today. It's going to be maybe an hour. And then, of course, if you want to be more involved, you want to devote more of your time to this, that can lead all the way up to volunteering in some of these centers, working in these centers for 10 or 20 hours a week, or that can look like being part of committees that exist on campus through associated students. That could be, a couple of hours a semester as well. So there's really a ton of options depending on how much time you want something to take. You can also join student organizations that are doing some of this work as well. Some of the student organizations have attendance requirements. Most of them do not. You kind of go at your leisure and when you can. But the other thing to keep in mind is, like with most things in life, you get out of it what you put into it. And so what I really encourage folks to think about is, what do you want to gain from your experience, and let that guide how much time and energy and effort you put into something. If you want to gain a ton, then you're probably going to need to put in an equivalent amount of time and energy. But if you're just like, oh, I just kind of want to learn a little bit, just out of curiosity, then you might not need to put in as much time and energy.
Perfect. There you go. And then another question is, since the creation of the Division of Inclusive Excellence many years ago, what do you think has been the largest change that you've seen in the university since the introduction of the division? And, if you can kind of nail it down to one, that'd be great. But what do you think is the largest change that you've seen in the university, whether it be how we run things on campus, just the general campus community surrounding Sacramento State, the largest change?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been the sense of empowerment that other divisions, staff, faculty, and students, the community, the empowerment that they have felt to really take initiative and take action from where they are. I think previously that, the campus wasn't always feeling confident or comfortable that they would be able to do that, or they didn't know how to do that because there wasn't necessarily some place to go. Or if they were doing it, it was very micro, and it was on a very small scale, and folks weren't able to know, hear, or see about it. So it's that empowerment of the campus community, but also the elevation of the experiences and the impact that has been had. So again, emphasizing that this work we've been doing this work on our campus. These centers have been doing this work predating the Division of Inclusive Excellence, and people have done a lot of work and put a lot of effort into to getting us to where we are. That being said, we are continuing to grow and mature and evolve as a campus community, and know that we still have work to do as well. But it's exciting to know, as we're doing some of that capacity building, again, on our campus, it's not one person who's responsible for creating all this change. It's, the collective of the university and the Sacramento community as well that's really helping to lead the change here.
Great. Christina, I have a question from a Taylor Bradley in the Q&A feature. I'm not African American, but I have an adopted brother who is African American. If I wanted to learn more about African culture, where would I be able to go to learn more about the culture, even though I myself personally am not?
Yeah, that's a perfect example, right? So if you have some type of interest in, for one reason or another, for expanding your understanding of the culture, the cultural centers are absolutely a great way to do that. So the MLK Center would be a fantastic place to go for that specifically. Also, student organizations that exist, the Black Student Union that exists to help to talk about some of the specifics of this area is a really great resource as well. And the Multicultural Center is for this specifically for folks that are maybe straddling multiple different cultures, and to be able to understand how different identities and different cultures and that intersectionality, right? The identity of being, non-African American, but having a person that you love or that you're close to that is African American, and recognizing how that impacts how you move about the world in your life is really important. So just learning more about that is definitely, those are two, just off the top of my head, two really great places to get started.
Perfect. And then Christina, as far as, the last 13 months, a lot of us have been working remotely from home the last 13 months with the global pandemic. So, what are some of the ways that the division has stayed connected to our current students or our faculty and staff while, a good majority of the university is still working remotely?
Yeah, so fortunately, with the technology that we have these days, the transition to remote work has, other than the way that we're presenting, it's not really shifted the impact that we're having on the campus community, which has been great. So we're still having the Inclusive Excellence Learning, we're still doing trainings out of the Office for Equal Opportunity. Everything's just via Zoom, everything's just remote. And so we're eager to get back to in-person when we can. But at the same time, it's recognizing, like most of the campus, it's about shifting our efforts in how we're doing things, and not necessarily completely eliminating something or anything like that. But it's been a challenge for how to respond appropriately. So, having virtual town halls versus an in-person town hall, how do we even manage that? And can we have a similar impact having virtual healing spaces versus in-person healing spaces? So, again, a lot of it is about supporting the campus and other campus centers and areas that are doing great work, supporting them so that we can better leverage the resources that we have and be more impactful all together as a community.
Wonderful. And then I have another question from Tamia Shaw in the Q&A feature. They're asking, are there any spaces to just hang out and chill with people who may identify the same as you?
Yes, tons. Short answer is yes. Where those spaces are, that's really going to be the part of the journey of integrating to Sac State. So if it is about cultural related things, right, that would absolutely be, some of the centers that I mentioned. All of them have an informal seating space. The Pride Center, there's couches in there, there's library in there. You can check out things. It's not uncommon to see people eating lunch together in there. Absolutely spaces to just hang out. People can study in there if they want to. And that not only can you do that, you're strongly encouraged to do that. Because again, recognizing that sometimes when you go out into the world and you're interacting with folks that maybe don't get you, you need to come back and recharge and rejuvenate with your people, right? And then, they'll get you, they'll laugh at your jokes and all that stuff. And then you can go back out and deal with the world that you need to deal with. But definitely get what you're saying. All the spaces have formal programming, but a lot of them have those informal opportunities as well. Lounge space, things of that nature to just support and create community.
Perfect. And then you mentioned a little bit earlier, Christina, that we've done a lot of work, and the work that the university has done to show an emphasis on diversity and inclusion has started way before the division, and we still have a lot of work to do. Knowing what the direction of the Division of Inclusive Excellence, what are some things that you see on the horizon and the direction that you hope to see the campus community headed in here in the near future? So as far as direction, what are some things that are on the horizon that students can expect from the Division of Inclusive Excellence at Sac State?
Yes, so definitely continued efforts related to the transitional and transformational change and that capacity building for campus, continued empowerment for our campus community, making sure folks know not only their options for empowerment, but encouraging them to take advantage of those options as well. Like I said, in May, this upcoming month here, we're going to be hearing from those anti-racism committees related to the plans that they have, and this could absolutely be opportunities for even more people in the campus community to be involved. Because again, what the committees are not going to do is say, hey, inclusive excellence, here's all the stuff that you need to be doing. That's not what's going to happen. This is truly a community effort. So moving us forward into doing that. And then the other piece, I keep forgetting about this, is continued opportunities for community involvement and just really shifting the culture on this campus so folks understand that diversity, equity, inclusion work is the responsibility of the entire community. It's not the responsibility of these individual centers. It's not the responsibility solely on the Division of Inclusive Excellence or just on OEO. It's on all of us collectively. We all are members of this community. And if we want to create the environment that we want to see, then we need to be responsible for creating that, right? It's be the change you wish to see in the world. So encouraging, empowering people to do that. So when we're hiring, for example, for our chief of police, our chief of police, Mark Iwasa, is going to be retiring. And so this is a great opportunity for the campus community to come together and say, hey, we want input on who our new chief of police is going to be. What type of skills or experiences do we want our new chief of police to have and to have done? And recognizing how someone in a position like a chief of police has such a huge impact on our campus community. But again, really just calling out to our campus community to get feedback. We've had multiple opportunities for feedback sessions for folks to attend. Also have been pushing out regularly reminders for people to just give written feedback if they can't attend some of the session, but just kind of sourcing all that information all together to find out what's going to be best for our campus community. Same thing with our bias response director. So once that position becomes available on campus, just having that be another resource for folks in our campus community to use in order to continue to feel empowered and successful here.
Perfect. And then Christina, a lot of our students who are in this session, everybody in this session has been admitted to Sacramento State. So first of all, congratulations to you for being accepted to Sacramento State. But many students may still be up in the air on deciding whether they would like to go to college for fall 2021, whether it's their local community college, a different university. So, what is the primary thing that you want students, parents, and guests to take away from this session? One thing that they'll remember that's going to set Sacramento State apart from other campuses that they may be considering.
Yeah, so the one thing that I would say that I would want folks to take away and remember about Sac State and the work that we're doing here is recognize how important the campus's culture related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. How powerful is that culture? And is that environment one that will support you as a person and allow you to thrive? What you're going to find on a lot of other campuses is, like I said, there's one person that is the maybe chief diversity officer, and they're not supported with financial resources. They're not supported with human resources. There's not always a lot of support that the university is putting behind those efforts of that particular individual, except maybe, some trainings or something like that. And so just really examining how the university is not just the words that they're using to say that they're about diversity, equity, inclusion, but really, push back on that and say, show me receipts, right? What have you done? And so recognizing that that's part of what this the purpose of this presentation is to show you not only what we've done, but to also recognize what we're doing and what we are still planning to do, what we have coming up as well. And we would love for you to join us as we are moving these efforts forward, because we are definitely stronger and better together.
Wonderful. Christina, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturday to come talk to our admitted students, families, and guests. I think we all learned a lot about the university and our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I appreciate you coming out and speaking to our students. As far as my student participants in the session, thank you so much for joining us in this session. This is not the last session of Admitted Student Weekend. We are having more sessions, one that's going to begin right here at 1 p.m., 2 p.m., and 3 p.m. as well. I did notice a couple of students were asking about the format of classes for fall 2021. We're actually going to be talking about that in our COVID-19 update session that's going to be happening at 2 p.m. I went ahead and I put the Admitted Student Weekend website in the chat feature that's at the bottom of your screen. So if y'all want to go ahead and click on that, that's where you will be finding the Zoom links for the rest of the day. So I highly encourage y'all, if y'all want to learn about the format of classes for fall 21, highly recommend joining in that 2 p.m. session. COVID-19 session updates. To everybody in the session, thank you so much for hanging out with us today on your Saturday afternoon. If you have any other questions, again, Christina put the Division of Inclusive Excellence email right there on the page. Definitely reach out to them if y'all have any further questions about getting involved with our university as a first-time student at Sacramento State, whether you're a transfer or a first-time freshman student. So thank you so much to all of my students, parents, and guests in this session. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we will see you all in fall 2021, and definitely let us know if you have any other questions. Take care, everyone, and enjoy your Saturday.
Bye.